On today's show, Jeremy Poock, founder of Senior Attorney Match. We'll be talking about the buying and selling of law firms, how law firm M&A works, what makes a practice valuable, and why now is the perfect time for growth-minded firms to acquire books of business.
So essentially any firm that wants to grow and is thinking about how do we grow this firm, the consideration of not having to go to another networking event or getting back, we were just talking about publishing a bunch of content, digital marketing wise. Yes, to both of those. The acquisition of that book of business of a senior attorney-led firm presents instant client growth.
Welcome to the Alpha Lawyer Podcast, a show dedicated to exploring what makes law firms thrive. I'm your host, Jason Marsh. Join me as I interview some of the smartest thought leaders and accomplished law firm owners in our space. Together, we'll dive deep into law firm operations, marketing, technology, finance, and everything else you need to build an incredible firm that allows you to live your best life. Hello, and welcome back to the Alpha Lawyer Podcast. I'm Jason Marsh. Today, I'm here with Jeremy Poock, and we're going to be talking about law firm M&A. That's the buying and selling of law firms. And so for those of you that don't know Jeremy, he's the founder of Senior Attorney Match, and he helps design and implement law firm sales and mergers for various different types of attorneys. So welcome, Jeremy.
Thank you so much, Jason. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, I'm so glad you're here because I think this is such a fascinating topic and one that I think doesn't really get discussed often enough and really is a big missed opportunity for lawyers. And that is the buying and the selling of law firms. And so whether that's a firm that wants to grow through acquisitions or a senior attorney that is starting to think about their future and what a succession plan might look like, I'm looking forward to getting into all the details on how everything works. But before we get into the specifics on how law firms are valued, what kind of law firm should be even thinking about an acquisition, or how sellers can prepare in order to maximize their exit, I just wanted to get your thoughts just broadly on how should law firm owners be thinking about mergers and acquisitions.
Sure. So as you touched upon, many lawyers don't recognize the opportunities on both the sell side and the buy side. So in terms of like what it is that lawyers and law firms should be thinking about as senior attorneys, and we define a senior attorney as an attorney that's practiced more than 30 years and is starting to think about when can I retire, how could I sell my practice, how could I just walk away from my practice. The eye-opening advice and information that we share with senior attorneys is that if you have clients and referral sources, you have value that another law firm is going to have interest in, because the common energy source as we see it for law firms is clients, right? Like, I mean, every single law firm, right? Unless you like work for the government, or are, in-house. If you are a for-profit law firm, the common energy source for all law firms is clients. So if you have clients and referral sources as a senior attorney owner of a law firm, you present value, whether it's to an internal buyer or, as we're seeing very often in the marketplace, to a growing law firm. To growing firms, right? What are they thinking about? What's the ownership of a growing law firm? What are they thinking about Monday morning, Friday afternoon, heck, Wednesday at 11 in the morning? How can we get more clients? So we're often saying, Jason, that the sales of law firms is effectively chocolate and peanut butter, right? That is, the senior attorney owner of a law firm, they've got clients and referral sources, okay? And growing law firms have a need, and they also have the resources and ability to continue to represent the clients. Put that chocolate and peanut butter together, and heck, we've got a very tasty, to continue that metaphor, hopefully people like Reese's peanut butter cups, but that's a metaphor we use sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, you could really see how the match works really well there. And certainly isn't anything that is unique to the legal market. And in fact, this exists all throughout business. But I think for a lot of people, when they think of M&A, they're thinking of very large transactions, corporate transactions, or maybe even private equity. But when you talk about smaller, even Main Street type of businesses, aren't really thinking, oh, I can buy those businesses, I can sell mine and get some liquidity out of them. But when we talk about, let's just in general, valuations. How are these valuations determined, and what are the most important factors that drive the value?
Great, thanks. It's a great question, and it's a question we've had to put a lot of thought into for many years. Founded Senior Attorney Match in 2012, and at that time as well, think of the question, like, how do you value a law firm? And the way we come to valuing law firms is by differentiating between what we call law firm sales 1.0 and law firm sales 2.0. Here, as we're talking in the mid-2020s, we're still seeing, for the most part, law firm sales 1.0 transactions. So what does that mean in terms of valuation? Law firm sales 1.0 is very much based upon the goodwill of a founding rainmaker attorney of what we call a small business law firm. By and large, at least Senior Attorney Match, we're not brokering, merging the sales of AmLaw 100 type law firms. We're really dealing with what we call small business law firms. Okay, law firms that have 20 lawyers and less, 10 lawyers and less, heck, sometimes even 5 lawyers and less. And over the course of the careers of a senior attorney, that is an attorney who's practiced more than 30 years, clients have come to them and referral sources refer business to those law firms because of one or more rainmaker attorneys at those firms. So then, as you asked, all right, how do you value that? Because if you take the rainmaker out of the equation, right, like I'm sitting here in cold Boston right now. Okay, so let's just say that senior attorney-owned firm sells their practice to another firm in the Northeast because the rainmaker attorney would love nothing more than to be in Fort Lauderdale or Boca or West Palm, name any of these warmer cities right now in the southeast part of the United States. But you take the rainmaker attorney out of the equation, the practice's value plummets. So when it comes to law firm sales 1.0, the value that we see, Jason, and that we find that buyers and sellers are very comfortable with is earnouts. Okay, that is, we're not actually coming up with a preset value that is paid at a closing table, because a buyer will say, we don't know if that book of business that the selling law firm has developed over the course of its career based upon the goodwill of only a handful of attorneys at that firm, or even just one attorney. We don't know if that book is going to continue to perform. So we're prepared to pay a percentage of revenues derived from the book of business, paid over a negotiated number of years, and that defines the value. What do we often see in the marketplace is something like the following: 20% fee sharing from that defined book of business, payable over 5 years, which equates over time to somewhere in the neighborhood of a 1 times gross revenues. That's law firm sales 1.0. By the way, it can be significantly more than 1 times gross revenues if the book continues to grow, if there's marketing that's done that the senior attorney-led firm, they didn't market to the clients and referral sources over the course of the career of the senior attorneys at the selling firm. Buying firm may offer more practice areas, right? It's a niche practice. All of a sudden, joining a practice that can continue to represent clients in the niche area and also represent clients in other areas. So selling lawyers can get more than a 1 times gross. That's what we see in 1.0. Now let's talk a little bit about 2.0. Okay, and law firm sales.
Let me just stop
you.
Oh
yeah, please.
Just really quick, because I have a couple questions, because I think this is really interesting. I do have a little bit of a background in M&A, right?
Yeah.
And the standard model is, okay, we're going to pay some multiple of your, EBITDA or your earnings. And most of that is going to be paid at the closing table. There'll be some other structure like an earnout or a seller financing. It sounds like these type of transactions are entirely seller financed. In other words, there's not any money that happens at the closing table. It's all terms post-close based on the ongoing performance or whatever contingencies you define, whether it's an earnout or so. I just wanted to point that out. I did not know, and I think that's interesting, because I think that really takes the risk factor from a buyer way down, and I think you can potentially create some additional upside for the seller in the transition, and assuming, as you say, that book of business continues to perform as stated. So okay.
Those are really, so now let me share with you, those are very astute observations, because you're exactly right. Right? The value proposition that Senior Attorney Match presents to buyers is, how would you like a really low risk opportunity to acquire a book of business that you would pay for as it performs, right? Buyers, at least the entrepreneurial types, because Jason, I think as you know, you work with a lot of lawyers. We're very risk averse as a breed, okay? We come up with all kinds of issues for why not do this? Why not do that? Entrepreneurial, growth-minded, growing law firms recognize that, wow, Law Firm Sales 1.0 is a tremendously low-risk opportunity to grow the practice. And to sellers, you put your finger on it as well. I'll just use a phrase that we've developed over the years, which is called trust transfer, right? So the onus is on the seller to say, okay, seller, you think that your book, or you know that your book of business is going to continue to perform. Awesome, okay? All you need to do is when the phone rings, an email comes in, or a text message comes in from any of your clients, that you pick up the phone. You don't need to do this in perpetuity, but at least for the first X number of months, maybe even years, and you can be outside walking on the beach in Fort Lauderdale and get on a cell phone call with one of your best clients. Say, you know what, I really trust Judy in the home office, in the office that I've joined in Manhattan. Judy has been doing this area of practice that I've been doing for you, for the last X number of years. Judy has 20 years of experience as well. I'm going to set up a Zoom meeting. You, Judy, and I are going to get on that meeting tomorrow afternoon. Senior attorney then just stays on that Zoom meeting for literally 3 to 5 minutes and assures the client's in great hands. I trust Judy. Now, Judy, as you know, I'm spending now the winter in Florida. I'm going to sign off of the Zoom meeting, but please copy me on email messages. Contact me if you have any questions, and you're in great hands with Judy. Goodbye. Senior attorney gets paid that 20% or more, sometimes less, but typically around 20% off of the collections that come in from that client who now Judy has represented. So trust transfer is a huge part of the burden that's on the senior attorney, but senior attorney loves doing that anyhow. It's not a big skin off their back to do the trust transfer.
Yeah, and because it sounds like a common thing you hear in A is sort of the transfer of value, and that can be a lot of different things, but it's as the business or the law firm under the new owners, will the value that was created with the previous owner transfer? And it sounds like this is the exact way you're transferring that value over. You're transferring essentially the relationships that are the clients that have the value, that bring in the money, to the new firm and the new practice. Interesting. Well, I want to talk more about some of the other value factors, but you've mentioned multiple times now, as I've looked at some of the things that you've written, sort of the importance of digital value in a law firm, right? You've talked about the digital marketing disruption in the age of that vanishing rainmaker. Can you talk a little bit more about what that means and the importance of a law firm's digital value?
Yeah, sure. So thanks so much for asking that question. That's a great dovetail. So let's to Law Firm Sales 2.0, but let's address digital value as well. Okay. So many lawyers grew up during the pre-Google word of mouth era, right? Stated differently, that's like the era of the rainmaker attorney, okay? And that's that attorney, and I think so many of us so fondly reflect upon the person that's at your neighborhood kids soccer game, at the charity event, right? At, town hall or city hall. I mean, just the person that you know is a go-to for, hey, talk to Attorney Jones because he and his law firm, or she and her law firm will solve your problem. Okay, and the Rainmakers did exceedingly well, built great books of business, but then guess what? 2020. Right? While we were all unfortunately stuck in our homes, okay, for so many months, the entire world pivoted digitally. Just like we search for everything and anything today on Amazon, we watch our movies on Netflix, we ride our Pelotons, we order pet food, online. Clients today are completely bypassing the rainmaker attorneys because they're going to what is now America's greatest referral source for lawyers and law firms, Uncle Google. So as lawyers and law firms were pretty much pushed into this digital disruption because clients demanded it, right? Clients went to Google looking for best attorney near me, just like we're looking for best hotel, best restaurant, whatever near me. So law firms have upped their games and have invested significantly in digital value. So let's get back to your question, right? What does digital value even mean? What it means is that lawyers and law firms are investing in their Google business profiles, right? In investing in pay-per-click, investing in SEO. Very importantly, they are publishing digital content on a regular basis to multiple channels of digital marketing. Of course, we want to be found on Google. But clients today, rather than asking their mother, their brother, their sister, their workout buddy, their accountant, whatnot, they are going online because would-be clients today, they want to know, like, and trust attorneys before they're even speaking with them. And to do that, law firms need to be present by publishing digital content on a regular basis. If you're publishing digital content on a regular basis, well, lawyers, we're not that stupid, right? I mean, I'm not saying we're stupid in general, we're smart, okay? But we're not necessarily digitally savvy. But when you start spending money on digital content, you're going to start reviewing the data analytics about it. Okay, we're doing better on Google. Maybe we're doing better on LinkedIn. We're doing better on Facebook. Maybe we should be putting out more videos on Instagram. For some lawyers, it's content on TikTok. What is that leading to? That those data analytics are leading to law firms developing brand value. Okay? Because when a law firm can show that X number of clients are coming to the firm on a regular basis, not because Attorney Jones is the person that we see at our church, on our soccer fields, at our city or town hall, but it's because we keep seeing that firm in front of us and we've seen the content, the digital content, we know, like, and trust them. And from a data analytics standpoint, a firm can show that we're getting X percentage of clients that are coming in through the web because of our SEO rankings. We know that we rank in such and such a category at such and such a number within those rankings. We have real digital value. And as a result of having real digital value, those multiples, like we talked about before in Law Firm Sales 1.0, the multiple is only about 1.0, right? A 1x. When law firms can show real digital value and brand value supported by data analytics, the multiples are climbing higher. We are seeing this particularly right now in personal injury law. Of course, one may think of Morgan & Morgan. If John Morgan called me today, Jason, I would take the call, okay? And I would say, congratulations, Mr. Morgan. You have developed probably a multi-billion-dollar brand. Okay, but he's not unique. Morgan & Morgan is not unique. We're seeing in the personal injury law space, because they've got so much data analytics on all of the digital value that so many PI firms are developing. We're going to see that in multiple other practice areas as well. And when you ask, what is digital value? Digital value is going to depend upon those data analytics points that are showing that clients are coming to firms not because of the personal goodwill of given lawyers, but because of the digital and brand value that they've developed by investing in multiple multi-channel digital marketing.
Yeah, and so essentially is to say, by building the internet presence and all the different ways that can be done, that is actually driving client acquisition, which goes back to what you were talking about earlier in the performance, either of the existing book or the ongoing ability for the business to acquire new clients. Because I know, looking at any type of acquisition target, one of the key things you're always looking at, if the business doesn't have like very strong recurring revenue type of model, how is it acquiring clients? And oftentimes, and I've used this example before, I think if anyone's ever watched Shark Tank, I forget the guy, but he always asks, how much does it cost to acquire a new great business? You guys are a great team. How much does it cost you to acquire a new client? And I imagine as a buyer of a law firm, that is a big piece of the equation, not just what have you done in the past, but what is this firm going to be able to continue doing in the future?
You're exactly right, Jason. Yeah.
So let's talk about the buy side, growing by acquisitions. What types of law firms should even be thinking about this?
Sure. So essentially, any firm that wants to grow and is thinking about how do we grow this firm, the consideration of not having to go to another networking event or getting back, we were just talking about publishing a bunch of content, digital marketing wise. Yes, to both of those. The acquisition of that book of business of a senior attorney led firm presents instant client growth. Okay, sort of drop the microphone on that, and not enough growing firms recognize it. Let's answer your question more succinctly, though.
Yeah.
What we've learned over the years is that when buying firms are considering growth by acquisition, we really recommend what we call like-kind acquisitions. Okay, that is, if you are a trust and estates law firm, okay, then we highly recommend the type of acquisition you should make is another trust and estates law firm, right? You've got the depth. That's what sellers want. Sellers want to join a firm that has a deep bench in their practice areas. So if you're that growing trust and estates law firm, the right like-kind firm to purchase is another T&E firm. By contrast, we'd recommend against if, let's say, you're a T&E firm and you think to yourself, you know what, if we just added family law, right? Like we do trust and estates. Why don't we pick up divorce, right? It's typically under the same roof in terms of the courthouse, probate court, family court. They tend to be, similar courts, similar judges. Why don't we pick that up? It'll be a complementary practice area. You're going to Family Feud, survey says, I'd say on that one, okay, because A, selling attorneys want to go to firms that already practice in their practice areas, and B, it's just outside of your lane. We really recommend a buyer stay in your lane, grow by acquiring another like-kind practice.
Yeah, that's a great point, because my next question was going to be, how should firms decide really what specifications they should be looking for? And of course, staying in your lane sounds like a pretty important one. I've heard that in M&A before. It's not in this case that it sounds like people are going to have to go through bank financing, which often look, okay, what's your experience in this particular sector? If you don't have it, they're less likely to want to fund it. Same thing here, because it's the seller that ultimately is the bank, as they're the ones extending some amount of risk that this buyer is going to be able to take this law firm, continue what it's already doing, maybe bring it to the next level, because of course their payout is contingent upon them being able to do that, right?
Exactly. And I'll also just say that while we're in this era of 1.0, which is really not going to last all that much longer, right? Because firms are developing digital value. So for today's growing firms that are going to sell tomorrow, they will benefit by getting higher multiples. It is a great opportunity for growing firms that would be looking at law firm sales 1.0, where you really are purchasing the book of business of that rainmaker attorney or attorneys. Like, this is the time to be purchasing those books of business, because 5 years from now, Jason, I don't think it's going to be the same. I mean, I think it's going to be nice for my practice, I hope, because we'll have higher sale values, and heck, that's how brokers get paid. Higher sale value, higher commission to the broker, right? But to the buyers, now is a great time while we're still in law firm sales 1.0 to benefit by not having to put down significant amounts of money up front and borrow and whatnot.
Yeah, it seems like an absolute no-brainer to me, particularly, again, like I know how these deals work outside of the legal space, where sellers are looking for large chunks of funding at the closing table, and most cases probably looking for 60, 70, 80%, and maybe there'll be some seller financing or an earn out for the rest of it. But in what you're talking about here, there's very little risk. Now, where is the risk? I'm trying to figure this out. Obviously, as a buyer, so when you buy the law firm, is it yours at day one, or is there I wanted to talk about price and terms a little bit later, but I think it's important to get into the details here. Like, when does the acquirer, the buyer, fully own the firm, in the sense that if I'm a seller who is buying my firm, what is their capability to not screw up what I've built? And potentially there could be malfeasance that does, I'm going to just spend tons of money on building out the staff, on marketing, and then there's no profit left over to even share. So, like, how do those things work?
All right, so let's talk about the mechanics of the sales and also what are the risks, okay? So mechanics of sales to date are that we're not really writing up sales per se. Okay, there is a rule of professional conduct that the American Bar Association published in circa 1990. It's Rule 1.17 of the Professional Rules of Conduct. Every state has a version of that rule, which is great, okay, and it defines how sales of law firms happen. The only or very significant downside of that rule is that most states include the provision that the ABA model rule sets forth, which is that in anticipation of a sale of a law firm, selling law firm needs to notify all of the seller's clients in advance of the sale that the seller is contemplating selling the law firm and give the clients 90 days notice to pick up their files. Okay? Because of the logistics involved with that, buyers and sellers both get worried that, and really a seller gets more worried even than a buyer, that if a seller tells his or her clients that I'm contemplating selling my firm and you can take back the files, well, what would happen? Some, and maybe even a lot of clients could just jump ship, ask for their files back, and you lose the buyer as a result. Structurally wise, as a result, we're typically, and I want to answer your question, like when does the sale happen? We're typically structuring law firm sales really as mergers. Okay, and I put merger not in the legal sense, but it's really because in actuality, what happens is senior attorney and additional attorneys are literally recruited into growing law firms, right? When I say merge, the firm is merging in, but really the senior attorney and other attorneys and staff joining the growing law firm. Clients are matriculating over to growing law firm, and at that point, to use your word, like when does ownership change? It's really when does the relationship change, right? That is, the senior attorney sends out an announcement letter, not saying, hey, I'm selling my practice per Rule 1.17. No, I'm excited to announce I am joining. I am merging with such and such growing law firm. I'm very excited that I now have this benefit of a deeper bench. My team is still here with me. Okay, I have access, you, my clients, have access to a deeper bench. I'm going to be here for X number of years or months, however it is, and you're in good hands with them. So hence the ownership really changes when the senior attorney and other owners join that growing law firm. You asked the question also, what are the risks? Okay, a significant risk is just firm culture. And that's a big part of the broker's role. Okay, and the due diligence. So you referenced A, multiple times, and we know that in A, due diligence is just huge, and it's huge here as well, right? We find that it actually takes 6 meetings between an initial meet and greet and signing an agreement for an agreement to actually happen. And so much of whether a deal will happen or not is based upon the due diligence. We got to look at the numbers, right? Do billing rates match up? Do the depth and practice areas, do they match up? But besides that, does the culture of the senior attorney's firm and the growing firm, do they match? Do they mesh? We're always cautioning both sides. Let's try to avoid puppy love, right? Because it's like dating, right? I mean, we all dated somebody at one point in our lives where, a relative would have said to us, be careful of such and such, a person. Similarly here, due diligence is extremely important because a risk is that if people overlook cultural differences, we've only literally in 12 years had 3 deals that didn't work. Each of those deals that didn't work were because of a culture misfit that arguably we could have seen ahead of time.
Yeah, it's hardly surprising because when you do study just traditional M&A, you will always hear that the biggest failure point is in the integration post-acquisition because cultures don't match. That is often the reasons that these things fall apart and ultimately don't have the synergies or whatever the goal are meeting the goals that were intended. So we're talking about a number of different things. I want to go back a moment, and we were talking about some of the specific factors that really drive the value within a firm. So, of course, existing book of business, the continued performance of that book of business. You mentioned referral sources, but there's also goodwill. There's the team. I know you've mentioned subject matter expertise, and what about systems and processes? And all of these things are also things that the acquirer or the merging partner is going to get with it, not just the digital value and the marketing aspects, but all these other things that help actually deliver on the work. And I can imagine there's, acquisitions for buying a team. So maybe someone wants to expand their capabilities.
Yeah, absolutely. And you bring up a really interesting differentiator. Okay. So many senior attorneys, when they have younger attorneys at their firms, so much want those younger attorneys, senior associates, junior partners, to internally succeed to owning the firm. Those would-be internal successors, what do they really want though? They just really want a job. They want a reliable, predictable, and safe job. So to your point, growing law firms, yes, they want the book of business. Like the book of business is great, but when it comes to law firms, you need sufficient capacity to be able to service the book of business. So when a senior attorney presents as a value proposition to a growing law firm that A, we've got the book of business, B, we have talented lawyers, we have experienced paralegals, we have legal assistants, okay, that have been with us for 5 or even 10 plus years. And they don't just have their noses, in front of their smartphone, all day just checking their own social media. They actually, know what to do, when to do it, how to do it, and they do it well. We've done deals before, Jason. It's fascinating. I remember a few years ago that the buying group said to me afterwards, we really, of course, wanted the owner, but we really, really wanted the owner's office manager because she's going to help us go to a whole nother level in terms of the office management of our growing law firm. And that had a really profound impact on me. And ever since, when we are promoting our senior attorney-led firms, we are really highlighting the support staff. We just finished a matter recently that you have senior attorney, great book of business, and also 8 additional lawyers and 15 support staff. The 15 support staff are in a part of the country where the fact that they are all bilingual, English-Spanish, is absolutely huge in terms of the benefit to that acquiring firm, not just the book of business. What you put your finger on, that support staff, lawyers and non-lawyers, adds great value to law firm sales.
Yeah, 100%, right? Because of course you want to be able to buy the growth and you're buying that additional revenue and earnings. But, and we talk about this all the time, just within running a business, the importance of having a really good team so that you as a leadership attorney, you're able to focus on whatever areas that are bringing the most value to that practice, and knowing that you have attorneys and you have a support staff that are going to help you deliver at a high level, and you don't actually have to get as mired in that stuff. So I think there's just incredible value in just that if people want to grow. Because maybe and one of the things I was going to ask you is sort of what are things that buyers should look for, right? Because maybe me as a buyer, okay, I want to buy that firm because they've got a great digital presence. They're generating lots of new client leads and acquisitions. But I also might say, well, this other firm, they don't have great marketing. They don't have maybe the great internet presence, but man, they've got a great team. And you put those things together and you really can have something special.
Yeah, it's so fascinating, Jason. Great question. I remember, as to use that phrase, baby attorney, right? When I was a baby attorney, I worked for a firm and did some litigation. And one of the attorneys there, Ellen, said to me, she's like, Jeremy, when you're litigating, if you've got the facts on your side, you pound the table with facts, right? If you've got the law on your side, you pound the table with law. So I can just think of 2 examples of recent examples, Jason, where on the one hand, we had not such great revenues. I mean, it's pretty stagnant revenues, okay? But tremendous staff. And that's what we hammered home, is pounding the table with, how else are you going to pick up, multiple attorneys, multiple support staff? Fine. The revenues are what they are. You're going to be able to market and get more clients, but how are you in one clean swoop going to be able to pick up this level of talent? And another matter that we have going on right now, the revenues have deliberately gone down because senior attorney wants to work less, okay? And so he's actually turned down the matters. So I can't really pound the table on, hey, we've got decreasing revenues here, but it's only by choice. Instead, what we're pounding the table on is that his firm's rankings for keywords in Google in multiple, desirable keyword rankings in desirable regions, parts of the state where he practices, he's in the top 3. So we develop
the value there. What an incredible asset if you can buy that and now those leads are coming directly to you and your firm.
Yeah, exactly. So it's really fascinating because getting back to your original question, when you pointed out not enough people really think of purchasing law firms or selling law firms. We hear these stories of sellers that just hang up their cleats, or buyers that are just out there banging their head against the wall. Like, how can I get more clients? Like those 2 examples we just talked about are these great examples of where there was a buyer for that firm whose revenues are going down, and I'm really hoping, and I really do think that there's going to be a buyer out there, to your point, that is going to look at those SEO keyword rankings that he got in early. Okay, he was smart. Like 15 years ago, getting great advice from his digital SEO company to be honing in on these keywords. Now revenues aren't so great, but we're going to be presenting, to these firms, how would you like to take over this website?
Yeah, and what would it cost to generate those equivalent rankings and the traffic that comes from it? It probably multiple 6 figures in investment over the course of 15 years. And of course, it's far more competitive today than it was then. So those rankings have incredible value. So in terms of that being one of the factors a seller might, what are some of the other, let's talk about selling a law firm. You've talked about, there's a whole multitude of reasons, right? Obviously the succession planning and what's going to come next for your firm, but it's not necessarily the attorney themselves. They're not necessarily the only ones to benefit from a sale either. Who else is part of this win-win scenario?
So we really look at sales of law firms as generating 4 wins. Okay. Win number 1 is for the senior attorney, right? The person that literally put blood, sweat, tears over the course often of a generation, building up the value and thinking, what can I do? Very honorably, Jason, some of our clients, they really want to make sure that they're taking care of their clients. Okay. So the win for the senior attorney is, okay, you've sold your law firm often by selling to a growing law firm. So that's win number 1. Win number 2 is the key employee lawyers at growing law firms, right? They want a reliable, predictable, and safe job. So when their current boss is able to merge the entire firm, because for all the reasons we've talked about so far, right, growing firms don't just want the book of business. They don't just want the rainmaker. They need the capacity to continue servicing the work. So growing firms want and need those key employee lawyers and the other key employees. So it's incredibly satisfying to senior attorney sellers when they're providing continuing job security to their support staff, lawyers and non-lawyers. And that's a huge win, of course, to them. A continuing, reliable, predictable, and safe job. The third win, of course, is to the clients, right? We as lawyers have a duty to competently and zealously represent our clients. So in that respect, succession planning for lawyers really fulfills, literally rule 1.1 of the professional rules of conduct of competently representing one's clients is to make sure that you are competently making sure that there is a succession plan in place for successor counsel to continue to competently and zealously represent your clients. And the clients are a huge winner when lawyers can tell their clients and announce to them you are in good hands with this next generation of attorneys that are going to continue to represent you. And then the fourth win, of course, is the growing firm. Right? Growing firm, all of a sudden, they've got that new book of business. They've got more lawyers. They've got more other employees. And as we've touched upon, which is just absolutely huge, Jason. Like this digital disruption, that genie is not going back into the bottle. Okay, clients, I'm convinced, clients are just gonna go continuously to Google. And what I'm getting at there from the growing law firm standpoint is when you take on senior attorneys and additional attorneys, that their tomorrow project was always, oh yeah, I'll do the blog. Oh yeah, I'll do the e-newsletter. Oh yeah, I'd love to record that podcast episode. Now they've joined a growing law firm that can literally convert their subject matter knowledge into digital content in multiple platforms. They don't have to go out and hire their niece, their nephew, their grandkid to do it. The smart growing law firms have a digital marketing team, either as an outside service provider or even internally, and are scoring digital points significantly by asking senior attorneys, hey, could you please do this, do that digitally, because that's going to attract more clients for the future by converting that subject matter knowledge into digital content.
Yeah, it's like the idea here is, and I've heard other people talk about it, where you're thinking about these marketing efforts, particularly in the digital space, as an expense. But in reality, of course, it's an expense, but it's an investment in the long-term value of the firm, particularly if your goal is to start thinking about what you want to do with the firm when you're ready to move on. If you're an attorney that's, you're starting to see maybe retirement or some sort of transition on the horizon, say, I don't know, in the next few years or 12 to 24 months, what is the time frame and what are the types of things they should be doing to prepare their firm to be ready to sell and, of course, sell it for the maximum value?
Sure. First and foremost is to get one's arms around your client list. Right? Like we talked about towards the beginning of this podcast, the most valuable asset, the energy source of all law firms are clients. Is clients.
And can I just ask, like, let's say you're an injury firm, right? Where your clients, for the most part, it's a one-time engagement. Obviously, you're hoping to get some referrals. If something were to happen to them again, you've done a great job, they'll come back to you. But what about other types of firms? Are there more, I guess, recurring revenue type of, like, I guess the question is, how does the client's value change by practice area, whether it's multiple matters and engagements over time versus more of a one-off, maybe a criminal defense or, an injury type of firm?
Sure. We look at almost any client list is valuable, even if it's that one-off. But let's just pick on the one-off, and I'll circle back on the client list in a moment. One thing we haven't talked about, but in terms of organizing the client list, is also asking clients for 5-star Google reviews, right? I mean, like when people are looking today for social proof of why a would-be client should hire another firm, we are all so accustomed today to wanting to review and see the number of 5-star Google reviews. So I'll answer that question 2 ways. Even the one-offs, right? A personal injury law firm as compared to, let's say, your corporate clients, right? Your corporate clients that are coming to you multiple times per year. Yes, of course, that's valuable. Okay, but that's not necessarily to say that client list is in any respect more valuable, because the client list in general is what we want to be presenting to a growing law firm so that they can be touching them digitally. Okay, often and different than what yesteryear's word of mouth rainmaker attorneys would do once a year with a Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, type throwaway, card, calendar, whatever. But the major point here is that if you're considering selling your law firm the next 12 to 24 months, the number one priority is to organize the client list. Okay, what are the addresses of your clients, however far back you want to go. You want to go back only 5 years, you want to go back 10 years. If you have a CRM and you can go back even further, then terrific. But let's just make sure that we're gathering the addresses, the email addresses, and of course in today's day and age, cell phone numbers. And understanding, right? I mean, here we are in early 2025, right? There's new rules that are coming out at a federal level of like how to communicate by text, and email with clients. So we always have to make sure that we're complying with that. But that's the number one, is to know what your client list is. Also important, because so many lawyers, Jason, as we know, like we just start the year on January 1st, finish on December 31st. There's really not much planning that goes into, okay, like where are the revenues going to come from? But it's very important when you think of selling. All right, let's look at it. Where have the revenues come in from for the last 2, 3, 5 years? What are the trends? Where are we may be getting clients from such and such and for such and such a practice area and have a higher volume of clients in that practice area, but we're more profitable in another practice area. So knowing where the money comes from and what the trends are in your practice area is very important as well.
No question about it. All right. So, I mean, I feel like we've covered a lot. There's been a lot of really interesting stuff here. Even I've like found things that I totally didn't. So let's sum up kind of what we've talked about here today in terms of who this is right for, the selling attorney, the buying attorney, and the rough structure. Again, I want to make sure that part's clear, because to me, that is so fascinating. It really does seem so much more accessible than traditional M&A, where you're going to a bank, you're raising capital, equity capital, debt, and all kinds of things, where this is really something that's able to be done through a structure that works really well, manages risk between both the buyer and the seller.
Right. So in terms of who this model fits very well for, is just go back to what we call small business law firms. Okay, those are the types of firms that we have been working with for 10 plus years. Those are firms that are led by one or more rainmaker attorneys that in all likelihood do not have internal successors. They've developed great value, and they've developed niche practices often. Right? We may start doing multiple practices. What we find is that small business law firms at some point niche in certain practice areas. And as they're considering that they want to practice less, not necessarily stop practicing altogether, they want to practice less and they'd love to be able to get value for their practices, then we recommend that those owners of small business law firms consider what are their options to sell, merge with, join growing law firms that are very interested to grow by acquiring their practice, albeit in Law Firm Sales 1.0, by structuring terms that they're going to be based on earn-out terms. When senior attorneys continue practicing for a number of years, they'll get paid more. Often they're getting a draw plus fee share, or straight, that sort of, I wish there was a better phrase than eat what you kill, but it summarizes, that you get paid on the originations and collections that you do, as well as the originations and collections from work that you delegate to others. The major value of Law Firm Sales 1.0 is that selling attorneys get paid into their retirement years based upon the collections attributable to their books of business, paid over a negotiated period of time, where really the only onus on selling attorney is trust transfer. Transfer the trust of your clients and your referral sources to lawyers at firms that you join, and you will benefit significantly and greatly financially, as well as knowing that your clients are in great hands.
Yeah, I really love this structure. I mean, it sounds very much like an annuity, assuming, all the different things continue to perform. Okay, well, if somebody's listening, they're thinking of, okay, I maybe want to sell my firm, or maybe I would like to go ahead and do some acquisitions to grow my firm. What's the best way to get started with that process, to learn more, in addition to what we've talked about here today?
Great. So people are welcome to visit our website, which is senioriattorneymanage.com. We start our design process because we do these two things. We design succession plans for our clients, and we broker law firms. We start with what's called our next step workshop. So we meet with potential clients for 90 minutes on a Zoom meeting, and we go over with them at a very high level. What do you have? Who would want it? What are your goals? What are your options? What are your risks associated with the options and goals that you have, and what is your time frame? And that's how we start our process with every new client. It's always fun to hear the stories, Jason. It's amazing to hear stories of lawyers that just started from nothing, built great practices, and have so much to give to the next generation of lawyers, whether it's internally or what we find often with growing law firms. It's great to hear those stories during the Next Step workshop. And we work with lawyers across the country to help them with succession planning and brokering their law firms.
Yeah, I'll bet you've heard some amazing things. And that's a nice place to be, where you're really getting to hear about the experiences that attorneys, or any business owner, but attorneys have had, and starting from scratch, and what they've built and what that journey looked like, the good, the bad, and everything in between. Do you also work with buyers, or just exclusively on the sell side?
Yeah, thanks so much for asking. So for the most part, we're working with sellers. We just haven't expanded yet to executive searches for a buyer. I will say, it's going to sound very childish and adolescent. Okay, we offer to buyers often what we call seventh grade dating. Okay,
I'm sorry, you do what?
Yeah, exactly.
Say that one more time.
Seventh grade dating, Jason. Seventh grade dating.
Gotcha.
Imagine you and I are in the lunchroom. We go to the same middle school, and you want to ask Kelly out on a date, but you say, you know what? I don't know if Kelly would go out with me. You say, Jeremy, why don't you go over? Would you ask Kelly if she'd go out with me? So for buyers, we know that buyers know of other senior attorneys and senior attorney-led firms in their, that are their friendly competitors, but they don't want to approach them because they don't want to offend them. And what we find is it is extremely flattering when we, as senior attorney match, when I make a call to a senior attorney, say, those 40-somethings down the street or across town, if you're ever thinking of succession planning for your practice, wow, would they love to start a conversation with you. So we call it seventh grade dating. So that's the extent of work we do for buyers for the most part. Sometimes we take on buyer work, but for the most part, it's limited to seventh grade dating for now.
And in terms of for the sellers, is there a dating app that you can go and find prospective buyers that are in the market looking
Sure.
for?
I think there will be.
Do that?
Yeah, great question. So is there an MLS yet? Right? Something comparable to MLS or biz buy sell, right? When it comes to business brokerage. I think it's in its adolescence still. It's not something that Senior Attorney Match is doing just yet. Will something like that develop? I think it will. Okay, but it's not something where there are scores and scores of buyers and sellers as part of some kind of a listing service like that just yet.
Great. Well, this has been a great conversation. Thank you, Jeremy. So I just want to say I'm here with Jeremy Poock. Again, he's from Senior Attorney Match. He does designing and implementation of succession plans for lawyers. His website, seniorattorneymatch.com. And I also want to let you know that Jeremy leads a couple of monthly live stream programs. The first one is the state of the market for law firm sales in 11 minutes. The other, the Ask the Law Firm Seller Show. Both of these are on LinkedIn Live, and you can certainly get the replays on the Law Firm Seller YouTube channel. That's at the Law Firm Seller. Following YouTube and follow Jeremy on LinkedIn. They post daily, or he posts daily on, I assume, all things buying, selling of law firms. I'll make sure that your LinkedIn profile link is in the show notes here. But Jeremy, anything else you want to add?
No, just kudos to you, Jason. I really appreciated the opportunity. You did such great research. It was a really engaging conversation today. And we've gotten to know each other with our work with the American Bar Association, and just really appreciated our in-depth conversation today. It was a lot of fun. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. And I think, I think there's more. We can get really focused on maybe some other very specific aspects of the M&A process on another show, perhaps down the road. But thank you, Jeremy. I really appreciate you being here. Tremendous guest.
Thanks so much.
Thanks for listening to the Alpha Lawyer Podcast. I'm your host, Jason Marsh, and I appreciate you joining us today. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, leave a review, and share it with other lawyers who might benefit. You can find more resources and insights on building a thriving law firm at alphalawyer.io or the Alpha Lawyer YouTube channel. Till next time, keep building the firm of your dreams so you can live your best life.